And joining us right now on the Unpacking It podcast is one of our favorite guests, former NFL player, 15 years in the NFL, mainly at linebacker, played some other positions as well. But you can check out LorenzoAlexander.org to find all about Lorenzo and all that he's up to now, especially with the ACES Foundation and the great work that he's doing with his foundation. Lorenzo, great to have you back on. How are you?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you having me on. Things have been going well. I know amongst this pandemic, there's been a lot of craziness and a lot of ups and downs, but out of it, trying to always find the silver lining and trying to grow and be better. But I think the biggest thing is just having the opportunity to spend with the family, the kids, and kind of re-know your kids, get to know them a little bit more intimately, especially my wife too. So it's been it's been a good time for me. Even though I know there's a lot of heartache and in the world right now, I've been able to make the best of it and then serve where I can and probably try to close that gap.
Man, no, that's awesome to hear. And so for you though, like two things were kind of going on this year that were different. Of course, all the things that the world is dealing with that are different this year, but then for you, not playing in the NFL after such a long career, and that was the normal routine of your schedule and year and all that. So I guess how have you even navigated both of those things and just the change and the difference that life is for you now?
Well, I think because it's really been a 4-year period of me transitioning away from the NFL, and this wasn't something that was spur of the moment. I wasn't cut. I didn't get injured. I wasn't told you're too expensive. It was really my decision and my family's decision that last season, as in 2019, would be my last season playing football. And so with that, I was really intentional about the transition and, what I would be doing next. I had time to process it from a, physically and mentally standpoint. And really just, surrounding myself with people that have gone through it, asking questions, trying to see what worked, what didn't work. And so I really haven't struggled, at least from my perspective, as much as maybe you hear some other guys do, because I stepped away knowing that I was going to do it. It was my choice. And I was prepared in the sense of, I kind of knew what else I was going to step into, as far as media. Wanted to go back to school, wanted to coach my kids, which I'm doing. And so I have all these things that have kind of kept me busy and have helped me shift. And I've also been one of those guys kind of just throughout my career, I developed a relationship with Christ. And I think just over the last, that was 2007 when I gave my life to Christ. So what is that, 13 years now, where I've really transitioned away from football being my foundation or football being my purpose, where more now I see it as a vehicle for me to live out my purpose, right? And my ultimate purpose is loving God and really serving his people. And so now that the vehicles has shifted, my purpose hasn't changed. And so I think because of that, I still can live life to the full because I know what I'm connected to. I know what I'm doing it for. And so it's really been a blessing. I was telling a story to somebody earlier, you don't wish you play. I'm like, not really. I see these guys flying around. I just realize how crazy it is.
Yeah.
But I've been able to coach now, coach my kids. And that's a new vehicle that I'm using to serve, God's people. And I'm getting the same type of excitement out of it. Doing flag football, watching the kids grow, develop. That's part of the football player. You see your team develop, you develop as a football player. And then we got to the playoffs. It was kind of like a win or go home mentality in youth football. And I got nervous, butterflies. I was anxious, excited for the kids, excited for me. How was I going to call? And so I had the same feeling without all the bruises and, headaches and all the other stuff that comes with playing football. And so I'm still filled. I have a lot of joy and a lot of passion. And so I'm still enjoying life, and not playing the game hasn't created any type of, anxiety or depression, at least thus far in my life.
Man, that's awesome. So encouraging to hear, because like you say, that's not the case for everybody, but it speaks to your faith and your planning and being ready that was the right time to move forward. And I got multiple things to ask you from some of the things you said, but you mentioned coaching flag football. And I'm curious, at what point did you start playing football and specifically tackle football? And kind of what's your thought process on what age kids should play with pads versus
Right.
playing flag football as long as you can? Because to me, that's a fascinating option that
Yeah.
maybe not everybody fully embraces, that what flag football can do.
Right. Well, for me, I didn't play until high school, and it wasn't by choice. I was just a bigger kid, and in the state of California, it was about weight. And I was 8, and I would have had to play with 12-year-olds. And obviously, if you have kids or been around kids, you know there's a significant difference between being 12 and being 8
Oh,
from a physically and a mentally standpoint. So my mom wasn't having it. And so I didn't play ball until high school. And, I think because of that experience and seeing where I was still able to develop and grow and get a scholarship and obviously play in the NFL, that you don't necessarily need to put all those reps on your body when you're young. Um, and when you watch youth football, I mean, if you decide you want to do it, that's great. But my son, who's 10, can get the same benefit of being an athlete, flying around, trying to pull flags. I remember Barry Sanders saying he got good because he played flag football, and nobody could pull the flag. And if you can't get close to me to pull a flag, you definitely gonna get close to me to tackle me. So I think there's some positive to it in that sense of you kind of take the physical nature out of it, and you can really focus more on fundamentals and technique. Because when you put pads on, you just out there just trying to make something happen. You're just gonna fly around, and sometimes some of the fundamentals of what makes you a good football player kind of gets pushed to the side. And then number 2, obviously from a head and body and just overall physical health, the longer I can push that out as far as having those hits, having those repetitive hits, if my sons play interior line, that I can push and maybe add some years on the back end of their career, which, 2 is now is more fruitful because now they're making a living off of it. And then they also have another year of playing in the NFL that gives them a platform to serve and really utilize that much how I have to, help the community, speak out for the voiceless in different ways. And so that's kind of how I see it. But I completely understand for those that want their kids to play. I think the biggest thing is making sure that whoever's coaching your son or daughter is educated, informed, and is doing it in the safest way possible. When they're out there, especially when they're in pads and everything that we know about concussions and CTE and all those type of things, and really making sure that we're watching out for our kids and not just putting them back out there in that old school mentality of being tough, which I call dumb tough, when our kids are really hurting.
Man, no, I appreciate that perspective. And yeah, I don't know, growing up, I just didn't have that opportunity to play flag football. And I wish that I did, because I was too soft. I played with pads, but just wasn't any good. Whereas I played in the backyard and, it was fast and all that kind of thing. But I went out on the field with the pads and it just wasn't the same. So I think that would have been, I think it's a great outlet for certain body types and skill set, or those that develop later and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And to that point, I mean, it's really grown. It's really taken off. I think because of the physical aspect of tackle football, I think parents are more open to letting their kids get in the flag. And like you said, you can be more athletic. You don't have to worry about the contact, and you can develop your toughness per se and get acclimated to the game. Allow your mom to understand what's going on, so they feel safer once you decide to transfer over. And then nowadays, you can actually it's some programs out there where even our daughters can get full ride scholarships to college. So the game has really grown. The NFL is doing a great job of trying to make it accessible to all kids. You don't need to buy a helmet or pads or any of that stuff that's expensive, and have it in a lot of communities, and a lot of kids can play. And now they're trying to make it an Olympic sport. So there's a lot of things that's growing around the game of flag football that has made it, I think, to the forefront of youth sports and really how you can continue to utilize it as a platform to go on and get your education, and then even on the national stage when we're thinking about the World Games and the Olympics.
Man, I love it. That's cool. We host a flag football tournament around Thanksgiving here in Charlotte. So it's for men. So men kind of brush off the retired cleats and come out and play, but it's a lot of fun. So no, I appreciate you sharing about that. And so the other thing that you mentioned about going back to school, what does that mean? What does that look like? What are you hoping to do by doing that?
Yeah. I've been around long enough. I've talked to a lot of people outside of the game of football, and really even people that are in the game that have transitioned or in different fields. And you realize that I think we're all are gifted with an innate, ability to do certain things better than others, or gifted in whether it's leadership, speaking, understanding math, English, whatever it may be. But there's also a unique skill set that goes along with each new challenge or genre that you jump into, right? So I can't just say I'm a transfer from football and become a doctor per se without going back to medical school, right? And so I'm taking that same type of mentality because I want to serve the community. I have my foundation. I want to build a youth center. I want to continue to coach, but I can't do that without educating myself from an academic standpoint. I have a lot of practical and life experience dealing with youth and my own personal experience coming from a low income household. But there's a lot of studies, research that have been done that's going to only help elevate me. The same thing I watch when I watch game film. I understand what my opponent does, so then I can be more impactful. So that's what school is going to do for me. I just applied for grad school at Cal. We're going to wait to see if I get in, but it's a social welfare program with the intersection or emphasis in sports. And so just identifying kids, trauma that they might have to endure, low income households, what does, living in certain neighborhoods and the construction of those neighborhoods look like, and the different issues that come. And so from an academic and a research standpoint, and I combine that with my practical experiences that I already have, how do I combine those two and then create programming that's going to help develop kids and make them well-rounded, make them feel whole, and then very productive in life and be able to thrive and then give back and create a positive life cycle, especially from communities where I come from, inner city Oakland, minority communities, low income, and just really help them. And so even though I have a great heart, I want to make sure that it is an informed heart and I'm doing the right thing by them by continuing to educate myself.
Man, that's awesome. I love that. And thinking about, your heart for reaching that group and kind of what you're used to growing up, is there a specific issue or problem that you're most passionate about, or you're setting out to say, this one issue I really want to lean into, or is it a little bit more of a general approach?
Yeah, I don't think there's really any one issue because everything overlaps. When you start looking at low income, minority neighborhoods, you think about poverty. What does that lead to? Well, why is there poverty? Well, maybe there's only a single family household. Well, why is that? Well, maybe it was crime in the area and the dad is incarcerated. Well, how did that happen? Well, his dad was in it too, and so you get some systemic things that have been passed on generationally, and then out of that, some trauma happens. Maybe a child is taken by the state. And so there's just so many issues that overlap that there's not one issue. I think I'm identifying that everybody has an ability to be great in this world. God has gifted us to do that and the ability to do that. But sometimes our circumstances and environment in it block us from seeing who we truly are. And so what I'm trying to do is help kids, help families remove as many of those barriers. And maybe that's just having an understanding of this is how you overcome these barriers, but trying to remove as many of these barriers as possible and also help them understand what they've been gifted to do and the abilities that they do have so that they can be successful. So I guess it's a very general and vague, but there's a lot of overlapping issues that I want to attack. I want to help develop the young man, young lady, education, life skills, give them some wisdom and knowledge of how you navigate, high school to get to college. And then what does that professional realm look like for you? But then I also understand that there are some policies and the ways of doing things that is also pushing back on them from them and able to walk a straight line. So not only do I want to help the individual, I also want to challenge, our local government, officials on policies that are in place that are inhibiting certain groups from achieving, the American dream or achieving their success or being the best version of themselves. And so I want to work on both sides, especially here in South Phoenix. I live in Arizona, and that's where this is the community that I'm in. And so I want to help serve and just start identifying those things and those different issues where I can help push. And once again, use the privilege of being an NFL player, the relationships that I gained from that, the resources that I earned from that, and then be able to give back into these communities.
Gosh, it's incredible. It's inspiring. And I think too, I guess I'm just curious your thought process on the reality that for you, the NFL was a tremendous opportunity, and you look back at your background and upbringing and some of the obstacles that you were able to overcome to make it to the NFL. But the reality is, not everybody's going to have that chance, and not everybody's physically gifted to do that.
Right.
And so in your kind of messaging and your approach in reaching the next generation of kids and letting them catch a vision for what life can be.
Right.
Yeah. How do you approach that, knowing that, hey, everybody's not going to have my story and the NFL dream, but man, there's so many opportunities out there for these guys.
Well, there's a couple of things. So obviously right now I'm dealing with mostly youth, right? Kids are around my kids' age, anywhere from 18 to let's say 16 to 18, right? And everybody's gifted differently, as we said, but at youth sports, everybody gets to play. And so I'm being intentional about when I'm out here, even coaching flag football, when we're going through drills or we're working out. For example, yesterday was all about self-control. And so I was like, obviously, when I'm looking at you, you're going to give your best effort, right? But when I'm looking at somebody else, what type of effort are you giving? Are you working just as hard? Are you jumping just as high? Or are you going to take a little bit off because I'm not looking at you?
Wow.
And so then I try to transition to that into life. Like, you're not going to always have somebody looking over. Your parents aren't going to always be there. So develop those habits so when they're not there, especially when you go to college or even in high school, you have a little bit more freedom, you're still doing the things you need to be doing in order to achieve your dream, because it has to be yours. So that's one way that I'm utilizing sports to help them outside of becoming a professional athlete. Because obviously, like you said, everybody's not going to do that, but the practical skills and knowledge that you gain from it, you can use whatever you decide to do. It really doesn't matter. Doctor, lawyer, teacher, garbage man, executive, business owner. There's a lot of things that you get out of sports that is just life lessons. And we have to be intentional as coaches to be able to speak to those and make the connection to why it's important to do certain things versus telling the kid, just go, hurry up, do your best. Well, what does that mean to them, right? So just trying to make those connections. And then two, yes, everybody's not a LeBron James. Everybody's not, going to play 15 years in the NFL. Everybody may not even play in college. You may not be good enough to get a scholarship, right? But if you love sports, there are so many opportunities in the realm of sports that you can still be a part of the game, even though you're not the guy that people are talking about on Sports Center or Twitter or whatever outlet that you use, right? But for me to get on the field every day, I had a physical therapist, I had a massage therapist, I had a coach, right? I had scouts that brought me in, general managers that run the team. I have somebody that's working on my marketing side, my foundation side. I have an agent. There's so many things around it. These organizations are using analytics. So you study the game. How do you understand information that you can help a team win? So there's a lot of supportive opportunities around the realm of sports. And I just named a fraction of them. I mean, there's a ton of stuff from an individual player all the way to the organization, all the way to the NFL level of places where you can find your own niche, which in the realm of sports, where you're not necessarily the athlete, but you're still connected to a professional football franchise or league. So I'm also trying to expose kids to that, because I don't want people just to say, well, I'm an athlete and that's all I am and that's what I'm gonna go for. Great, you feel that way. But even if you're done, even if you play 15 years like me, I'm 37. So what I'm supposed to go now, sit on my hands and not be productive, not continue to build a legacy, not continue to pay it forward and impact people? No. So you have to develop other areas of who you are, other vehicles, right? So that you can continue to serve after one may stop for whatever reason, whether it's, you age out or you change your mind or God pushes you in a different direction. You always want to equip yourself to be able to be used and be used at the highest level. Therefore, why I'm going back to school. So if God opens up, hey, you want to run a Boys and Girls Club? Yes. Boom. I've equipped it myself, right? To be able to walk into that, even though God has provided, but I've also worked alongside him so then I can do the best job I possibly can versus just doing a mediocre job with the opportunity that he's given me.
Amen. No, that's awesome. And I kind of relate to what you were saying too, because I was cut from the 8th grade football team. So I wasn't going to be playing in the future. And then from a ministry standpoint, I always kind of had this pull to be a pastor. And so I thought, oh, okay, I have to go the church pastor route. And then God gave me the vision to incorporate sports and faith. And now I've got a ministry for sports fans. And
Right.
so, he equipped me and enabled me to do this. And so, yeah, so I can speak to that just from my own perspective. And so it's letting the next generation know what's out there, what's possible, and not having that narrow mind.
Right.
And that's cool. So I appreciate you being in the community and coaching those kids and letting them know some of those things. That's a cool thing. Well, the other thing you mentioned earlier as well, just this year has been actually positive for you. You've made the most of the circumstances that you kind of alluded to. And so I'm curious from a faith perspective and kind of a spiritual growth standpoint, what have you maybe learned, or in what ways has God grown your faith in the midst of transitioning from the NFL,
Right.
being home with your family, and going through everything that kind of we've all been going through this year?
Yeah, I've had a couple of instances in my life where things have appeared less than ideal, right? So whether it was me getting injured or being cut or something like that that prevented me from living life as I normally would, and COVID has done that to us in many ways. It's even taken many of our lives, right? And so I have tried to, in those times, try to find the positive. Okay, what is God telling us to do? And when He essentially shuts down the world, to me, that's saying, okay, I need to slow down a little bit, right? I need to take a big breath, especially in our country where it's hustle and bustle. I'm like that, just wired like that too. I'm a yes guy. Everything, hey, can you help us with this? Can you do this? Yes, 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 yes. And then you forget about some of the centralized things in our lives, as far as obviously getting in the Word with Him, really dialing into your own family, your own personal ministry that you have at home. And so I, especially early on when the kids were at home, I really tried to focus on that thing along with my wife. She did an excellent job of setting up a schedule where we every morning would carve out time to get into the Word. And so we would do daily prayer meetings, essentially, where we'll meditate, we'll calm ourselves, read the scripture, and then discuss the scripture. And so it was a great time to kind of start just building some foundational skills for my kids as far as the scripture and what it meant, and building some character in them. And also for me, God gave me an opportunity to kind of learn them uniquely, because they're definitely uniquely gifted and definitely wired differently. And so just as a father, being able to, okay, how do I communicate, trying hard to my daughter versus what does it mean to give great effort to my 6-year-old? And so, because they receive differently. And so it gave me a chance to really intimately get to know them. Also, just spending more time with my wife, doing the brunch dates, dinner dates, things that you tend to neglect when you're playing or you don't have the time to do. We got a chance to go to PAO, which is Professional Athlete Outreach, where a group of us, a big conference where married and single professional athletes get together and just dive into the Word and worship. And it's just really good to be able to cut on each other in that way and grow. So those are some of the ways. And then also trying to build, I guess, my circle here of people that I can do Bible studies with, be open with. And so just going through those things, using the Bible app and doing group Bible studies. And so I've really had a lot of time to kind of dig into that. Because if that's one thing where I am inconsistent in is making sure that I get into the Word every single day. And so this time allowed me to have more than enough time to kind of establish a habit so that I could feed myself every single day with the Word and get to know Him more intimately. And now when I do have those times where I kind of get away from it, I'm able to kind of refocus and get right back into it. So I think that's a way I've grown a little bit. I'm still working towards it to where it's consistently every day. But I've grown probably the most there, just being in His Word and getting to know Him and in prayer a lot more these days.
Amen. I love it. Well, as you were starting out talking about being a yes man and being busy and all that, I was shaking my head like a crazy person, but I was tracking right there with you because I can relate to that. And I've kind of been wrestling with it too, just especially with the end of the year, trying to finish a lot of things up and get things done and feeling kind of worn out just based on this year. But I'm just curious, kind of what have you learned from this season of slowing down that you hope will continue? Because I think, in some ways we've been forced to slow down,
Yeah.
and then maybe we've other things have popped up because of what's going on.
Right. And it is starting to pop back up and speed back up.
Yeah. So,
And so I still wrestle with it. So
Yeah,
it's not
I'm
like
there
something
with you.
that I've completely overcome. I just took advantage of the time when nobody was asking. I didn't have to leave the house to do anything.
Yep.
But what I have learned about myself is that I have to minimize. I can't be all things to everybody, because then I don't give my full effort. And so even though I'm aware of that, it's hard. And so I'm still trying to figure out, especially with not having football now. And I think this is probably the biggest thing I've had an issue with as far as transitioning, right? Is that for a long time, the focus was around football as far as how I would itemize things. I had the main football. And so I could say no easy. I got practice, or I got meetings, or I'm tired, I'm sore, I have to massage, I have all these things, I have a game, or whatever it may be, I have to train. So I was able to push a lot of things out. Now that I have all this free time, yes, this thing, but this is over here, something completely different, but I can do that too. And so I'm a little bit more scattered. And so I am trying to work on focusing that down to really like 2 or 3 things that I can do really well and really efficient at a high level. And I'm still working through that.
That's cool.
Because as I go back to school, I'm still doing, media and broadcast. I'm still trying to do some things in South Phoenix. And so even though they overlap, I'm still working on find that groove of what I established in football in my routine, right? Everything was kind of established, for me. I had the off-season workout. This is my workout plan. Here goes OTAs. All right, we get a little 6-week break. Here goes training camp, the season. And I had that groove. And so right now, I don't really have a schedule or routine, which I feel uneasy about, because things are kind of pop up, or something new kind of comes, and it's just kind of in flux. There's no real structure yet. So that's kind of where I'm at. And that's kind of where I don't want to say falling short, but that's where I'm at in my process of trying to figure out how to truly transition and set up and establish that next thing, and what that looks like, what's going to be included, what do I need to push out, and then how do I structure those things so I have continuity in my life and I'm not all over the place.
No, I think it's awesome. And I know that a lot of our listeners can identify with that, because I know I do. And it's just it's a challenge, but I think we have to be intentional and really evaluate, okay, what is my schedule? What am I prioritizing? And what can I eliminate? What can I hand off?
Right.
All those kinds of things. Because then, like for me, I'm getting here at the end of the year going, all right, I can't keep this up, because I'm getting worn out. And then, with changes, my wife and I had a daughter a year plus ago. And so adjusting to that, and then all the changes that we've all experienced this year, adjusting to some of those things. So I'm right there in the struggle with you. But I think that the most important thing for us is figuring out the rhythm of spending time with the Lord and being rejuvenated and equipped to attack the day with his power and strength within us, not relying on our own abilities and our own strength. So,
right. Yeah. I couldn't say it any better.
That's the key and the encouragement for us. Well, Lorenzo, man, we could talk all day. As we wrap up, I was going to lead with this, but we'll end with this. We got to talk about the Buffalo Bills. They're doing well, and you're hosting a podcast talking about the Bills, so people can go listen to you. Give them kind of the info on that so that they can hear more, but maybe give them a little teaser as to how good this team is, and what are your expectations kind of the rest of the way for them.
Yeah, well, first doing the Pressure Front podcast with Avalon Media Group and JT Jeremy Turner, which has really been cool for me, and just continue to stay connected to the football world. And I'm doing a couple other things, but Pressure Front podcast, wherever you get your podcast from, you can check it out there. Apple Music, Spotify, all those type of areas where you push it out to, you can get it there. And as far as the Bills, I mean, I'm not surprised, because I've had the unique seat of being there the last 3 years, 17, 18, and 19 with Sean McDermott, and the culture and environment that he has implemented, and the way the guys and the men adopted that and made it their own. And so it's really been a seamless progression. Even for me walking out of the locker room with guys stepping up, being the leader, and just continue to climb and take that next step. We've all seen the growth of Josh Allen and him kind of stepping and peeking into that elite era of quarterback play. You know, I think he has like 6 or so 300+ yard games this year, and he had 0, which I think I'm a little bitter about.
That's right.
I
bet.
When I played with him, I was like, man, we couldn't get half of those last year. You know, we might have, you know, made a real run, Josh, but
Josh.
It's part of it, you know. I've just been very blessed to be a part of his maturation process, how he's developed as a young man, as a football player. Is really cool to see. And this team is something to be reckoned with because of the defense is starting to come around. Guys are getting healthy, and they're starting to hit their peak at the right time. And so if they can get there over the next couple of games and be able to sustain that, I mean, they can compete with Pittsburgh, who they play this week, which would be a good primer game. And then they'll probably get a chance to see Kansas City again at some point if they're able to get out of that first round, which is a team that beat them early in the season. But this team is much better. They've had some adversity to overcome it, and I think they're a better football team forward and can shoot out with them or play a tough game as we see this defense gets better. So I'm excited for them. And, you know, if you're not a Bills fan, I get it. But if you can watch them play, they're going to make some noise. You can jump on the bandwagon if you want to, too, because nobody circles the wagons like the Bills Mafia.
That's right. They're the best fans. They're so loyal, and I got to give it to them. So it's one of those things. Is this the year? Is this the year? Because we've kind of, been teased over the years at times with the Bills. But this year seems to be a little different. It really does. So it'll be fun to see. So it's I guess in one way it's a bummer that you're not out there, but I'm excited for the stage and season of life that you're in, and what an awesome 15-year career for you. And now you can sit back and enjoy being a Bills fan and cheering this team on and talking about it on your podcast. And also encourage everybody to check out LorenzoAlexander.org, and you find out all the information about everything he's up to now, as well as the ACES Foundation and the great work he's doing there. Lorenzo, man, always great catching up, and appreciate you being honest, vulnerable, open with us. And so it was a lot of fun.
I appreciate you, brother. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. There's Lorenzo Alexander joining us here on Unpacking It.